Sometimes all shots need are a little sauce to help them look more professional and cinematic. In this MotionVFX tutorial, we're going to go over how a few plugins can help you achieve that. Let's take a look at this shot, which is just a shot of a wooden ladder in the jungle. Hardly cinematic, I would say. It's shot in a log profile, so we'll need to convert it to a Rec. 709 color space first. Let's use mFilm Look. I'll double-click to apply, and open my inspector window. I'll head down to Convert to Rec. 709, and since this was shot on the Sony a7S III, I'll change this to S-Log version 1. I'll double-click the top of the inspector here so we can lengthen the inspector window, and let's toggle on levels so I can add a bit more contrast into this shot. Next, we'll scroll down a ways, and you can see that by clicking on Off-Screen Flare, we can add some of that cinematic sauce to this otherwise boring shot. If I want, I can head into the flare presets and change the flare to another option, but I kind of like this first option, Cold Glare. You can also adjust the intensity and the hue of that flare pretty easily if you'd like. And because this flare would assumedly be flickering through the trees, let's open the flicker settings and bump up the intensity and the speed a bit. Next, let's head down to our LUT presets to find a stylized look that'd fit this shot. Let's head into mLut Film 3 and go with Sentinel. We'll turn on a bit of chromatic aberration and adjust the intensity and softness. And all that's going to do is give a little bit of color fringing on our edges here, which in my opinion helps to bring our eyes into the subject of the shot, which is this wooden ladder. Let's toggle on a bit of lens blur, and let's decrease the range so it doesn't blur as much of the shot. And then we'll increase the intensity. Maybe I'll add a bit of film grain to give the shot more of an analog feel. And I'll lower the color noise to 0 so there's no color in our grain. The final thing we'll do in mFilm Look is toggle on our CinemaScope letterbox here. And I'll adjust the position offset so our ladder is more in the frame. The last and final adjustment I'm going to make is to bring our highlights down a tad and just add a bit more contrast to help it become a little moodier. And we just quickly went from this boring shot to something a lot more cinematic in just a few steps. Let's sauce up this drone shot. It is a beautiful shot, but it is a little flat and boring. Let's go with a dreamy travel video look. I'll start with a color grade. Instead of mFilm Look, we're going to use our free plugin mLut, which you can download on the MotionVFX website. Let's head into our inspector window and into mLut presets. Now, mLut does come with some free LUTs, but in my opinion, it is definitely worth it to pick up some of these packs. Let's go with Karina in mLut Film 2. Maybe we'll add slightly a bit more contrast by adjusting this slider here. And I'll click Hide so we can see what we're doing better as we move on. We're going to add another free effect to this clip, and that is mDiffuse, which comes with 6 options of streak and halation effects for your shots. Let's go with Diffuse 3, which focuses on more of the halation effect, and we'll head into the inspector window to turn off the noise. As you can see, this adds a bit of glowing halation in the brightest parts of our shot. Next, we're going to use an overlay from mMovie Lights, which has these beautiful drag and drop cinematic lighting effects. I'm going to go with preset number 44 here. And all I'm going to do is position it using the on-screen controls. And then I'll lower the vignette opacity on it so it's not as dark around the outside of the flare. But if you wanted to change the other parameters, you could. There are tons of options for customization with these. So we went from this to this. Last and final example, and I know what you're thinking, it's not possible to make this shot of me eating a cookie cinematic. Just can't be done. It can and it will. Check this out. Let's add mFilm Look to the shot, and since this was shot in a log profile, let's convert it to Rec. 709 the same way we did in the first example. Now we'll need to add some contrast back into the shot. I'll lower my midtones a bit, as well as my highlights a bit more. Movies tend to have slightly darkened highlights, so we'll go for that look here. You may or may not be able to tell that my shot's color is a bit off. We can make that adjustment by heading into Basic Adjustments and swinging the color temperature slider here. Now we can head down the list and add a flare. I'll switch the flare position to manual so we have full control over the position and movement of the flare. Then I'll use the on-screen controls to position it so it looks like this glare is the sun. I can make this bigger using the on-screen controls as well. Now that we have that set, let's add a LUT. Let's go with a LUT in our mLut Synth pack, and I'll go with Refreshing Current, which adds a cooler vibe to my shot. I'll toggle on some chromatic aberration, and we'll select some lens blur to help create more of a shallow depth of field look. I'll change the aspect ratio of the blur so everything inside these inner lines are clear and sharp, and everything outside starts to blur. We can adjust the feathering by increasing the distance between the inside lines and the outside lines. Next, we'll add some grain, and I'm going to go all in on this one, full grain power, and I'll bring the color of the grain to 0 again. The final thing I'll do is add a letterbox to the shot, but instead of the standard letterbox size, let's go with the Super Panavision aspect ratio. So we went from this Rec 709 version of the shot to this. These were just a few examples of ways to give your shots that cinematic sauce, but to see more ways, you're gonna have to subscribe to this YouTube channel and switch notifications to all so you get notified about every video. Have a great day, guys.